Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Mbeju. That's right, this grain-free Paraguayan cheese flatbread doesn't require any regular flour, which is great news these days. In fact, the last 2 times I went shopping, the type of flour this does use was the only thing left on the shelf. And not only is this unique and delicious, it's also super easy. Okay, pronouncing it might be the hardest part. Oh, and by the way, to the people that invent words, starting with 2 consonants is not ideal. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started with some of this. Cassava flour. And it is in fact gluten-free, grain-free, and nut-free. But not root-free. It's made from a root. And while it looks like regular flour, it's much finer, and I think a lot closer in texture to cornstarch. And what we'll do to begin here is add some salt, a little shake of cayenne, as well as some butter that we've cubed up. And then last but not least, a whole bunch of freshly grated cheese, which in my case was a fairly mild cheddar. And what we're going to do here is get into this with a couple clean hands. And for the next few minutes, we're going to rub together that butter, cheese, and cassava flour. And my favorite technique for this is just using your fingertips, just kind of pinching everything together and rubbing it back and forth. And we do want to start out kind of slowly. Because that starch is so fine, we don't want to create a giant cloud of that stuff and get it all over. But then once that butter and flour gets worked in, you can be a little more aggressive. And if you want, you can transition between your fingertips and rubbing it between your hands. And I guess if you wanted, you could try to use one of those wire pastry cutters. But I have a theory that your fingers are better because we're slightly warming up that butter and cheese as we rub, which I think might help integrate it a little better. And similar to when we're making pie crust, what we're after here is a mixture that looks like coarse crumbs. Okay, so something similar to this, where we're not feeling there's any large chunks of butter left. And then once that's set, we're going to add the only other ingredient here, which would be some cold milk. And we'll go ahead and drizzle that in. And then we'll basically use the same technique we started with, sort of rubbing it between our fingers until it's worked in. And by the way, the exact amount is going to be really hard to give you. Okay, I'll provide you with a pretty good guess, but you're really going to have to go by feel here. All right, part of that's going to be because of how dry your flour was, and part of that's going to be based on how much moisture was in your cheese. But one test you can use while you're doing this, if you squeeze a clump together, but it crumbles apart with just the slightest pressure, it's too dry. Which in that case, we'll go ahead and drizzle in a little more milk. And we'll keep doing that until we think it's just right. And the first time I made this, I was so confused, because it only called for like 3 tablespoons of milk, which wasn't getting me even close to the right texture. But then I realized the traditional cheese used for this is much moister. And because I was using something like cheddar, I needed to add a lot more milk. But anyway, no matter which you use, we'll want to rub in enough milk until this happens. Okay, we want to be able to squeeze together a clump of this, where it doesn't crumble apart until we apply a good amount of pressure. And also, the mixture is going to kind of start to feel cool and a little bit moist to the touch. Okay, not wet, not soggy, but it will feel like it's getting ever so slightly damp. And that's it. Once we've reached that stage, we can go ahead and cook our flatbreads up, which we will do in a small nonstick pan set over medium-high heat. And after letting it get hot for a couple minutes, we'll go ahead and transfer in about a half cup, or whatever it takes to cover the bottom of your pan, with a nice even layer somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch deep. And you do see these made in different thicknesses, but generally I prefer mine a little bit on the thin side. And then what we'll do as soon as that mixture is placed in, is go around the outside, around the outside, around the outside with a spatula, or maybe the back of a spoon, and just sort of press in any of those loose crumbles around the edge. And then once that's been accomplished, what we'll do is cover this and let it cook for about 3 or 4 minutes. And by the way, that's a wild guess. Or until the bottom is golden brown, and we're able to get a spatula under there and flip it without it falling apart. And right here is where I really need you to be brave and perform this maneuver with the utmost confidence, even if you're just pretending. And once that's uncovered, we'll go ahead and slide our spatula underneath. And in one bold movement, we will kind of toss the pan up while flipping that over like this. So that went pretty well. And at this point, all we have to do is cook that other side for about 3 or 4 minutes, or until it's nicely browned. And again, that's just a guess on my part. Okay, that's going to depend on the size of your pan and how much you put in and the amount of heat. So you're going to have to figure that out by trying a few. I mean, you are after all the Paraguayan of how long in the pan this should be staying. But I'd say about 3 or 4 minutes is a good guess. And when I thought mine was done, I went ahead and flipped it back over. Mostly to show off, but also so you could see exactly what it should look like when it's done. And that's it. We'll go ahead and transfer that to a plate, and then go in for a taste while it's still warm. And because this flour we're using has no gluten, What actually holds this all together is the melted cheese. And of course that and the butter is also what makes it taste so good. And the cassava itself has a fairly neutral flavor, so while it's not exactly like a wheat flour-based flatbread, it's not really unlike one either. And from what I hear, these are generally just eaten plain or with a little bit of butter, alongside a nice hot cup of coffee. But in the spirit of full disclosure, I just had mine with a glass of water, and it was still really good. But anyway, I went ahead and made a few more, and of course stacked them up so I could take a picture, after which I enjoyed another one, as I find these quite addictive. And while I really do enjoy eating these plain as is, I thought I would finish up with one serving suggestion, in case you wanted something a little more interesting and substantial. So what I did was squeeze on some chipotle mayo. Yes, using a small Ziploc bag with the corner cut off, although you can just use a knife and spread it. And I went ahead and topped that with some sliced avocado and some fire-roasted red pepper rings. And I went ahead and garnished with a little bit of green onion. And I finished up with a nice sprinkling of coarse salt, because avocado really loves that. And that, my friends, was just an absolutely fantastic thing to eat. And I've never been there, but I'm guessing this is what the millennials eat down there for breakfast, as their South American version of avocado toast. But anyway, the point is you can dress this up just like you can any flatbread. And whether you're looking for a new and interesting gluten-free option, or you just can't find regular flour because of the hoarders, or you just simply want something delicious to eat, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.